"Man, man, stop," cried a young girl. At the sound of this cry, all the men walking among the fruit and vegetable stalls at the market abruptly turned around. Some, judging by their expressions, seemed disappointed that the girl wasn't running towards them. Svetlana Romashkova, and it was indeed her, looked like a porcelain doll, petite and fragile, with fair skin and large bright green eyes. Her light hair was braided in a French twist, and freckles adorned her nose as if kissed by the sun. The surname Romashkova, fitting for the beauty, was given to the girl in the orphanage. When she was found and brought to the shelter as a little child, the fields were in full bloom with these beautiful and delicate flowers. Svetlana didn't complain about the choice. Moreover, she was luckier than the previous generation. Back then, all the nameless children were lined up, designated as first or second. The first ones became Sokolovs, and the second ones became Voronovs. Little did the caregivers know that they had simply divided the children into two warring clans. Since then, the Falcons and the Crows, in the best traditions of Shakespeare, engaged in internal battles, much like the Montagues and Capulets. It is rightly said that as you name the ship, so it will sail. In the case of Svetlana Romashkova, she grew up as a bright, sincere, and very kind person with an open heart. That's why, now leaving her vegetable stall to the neighboring saleswoman, the girl ran after a customer. A young man had forgotten his bunch of parsley. It cost just a few pennies, but Svetlana didn't want the man to come home and be disappointed when he realized he couldn't adorn his dish with fragrant greens. The brunette, whom the saleswoman desperately called, turned around in surprise. Noticing Svetlana's face, he smiled, recognizing the lovely girl. When he understood that Svetlana was waving the parsley he had bought, he became flustered. "You didn't have to run," exclaimed the man. "What have you? Now I'm embarrassed." "Oh, come on, you didn't go far," waved Svetlana, catching her breath. She tucked a loose strand of light brown hair behind her ear. The man, placing the bags on the ground, began searching for something in them. Then, he solemnly pulled out a chocolate bar. "Here, this is for you." Svetlana stepped back a bit, shaking her head. "No, really, I did it from the bottom of my heart." "And do you think I had malicious intentions?" The man laughed and handed the sweet treat to the saleswoman. "Thank you. There would be more honest and kind people in the world, and life would be more pleasant. I'll come back to you. I'll be a regular customer," he promised. "I'll be waiting," the girl said with a wide smile from ear to ear. Then, bidding farewell to the pleasant man, she hurried back. Lydia, the woman guarding both stalls piled with vegetables and greens, nodded at the girl. "Got it?" she asked. Waiting for a nod, she chuckled. "Well, Svetlana, you're quite something. Always trying to help everyone. Are you a saint or a fool?" "I just can't figure it out," said the woman. "Well, maybe someday someone will help me too," shrugged the girl. She opened a chocolate bar and offered it to the woman. She didn't refuse, pouring herself some tea from a thermos. Lydia was a shrewd and dishonest woman. Svetlana knew that she often deceived customers, even trying to teach the girl various tricks, like tampering with the scales or coming up with other schemes. However, Svetlana refused to engage in such antics. She wouldn't be able to sleep at night. Her conscience would torment her. "Well, I don't know, dear," Lydia remarked, looking displeased at the new saleswoman. "My conscience is silent, but my stomach is always full, so I sleep well." "I live by justice and conscience," Svetlana shook her head. "I believe that if you take someone else's money, you'll lose more. And conversely, when you give something to someone, it comes back to you threefold." "You tell tales," the woman scoffed. At that moment, the tent neighbors couldn't find common ground. Only later did even the grumpy Lydia become enchanted by the girl's openness and knave charm. When Lydia learned that the girl was an orphan, she softened a bit. She started bringing her homemade treats to work. However, her affection didn't last long. Soon, Lydia noticed that a constant stream of customers greeted the polite Svetlana with smiles and kind words. More and more people became regular customers of the girl. Rumors even spread around the market that the new saleswoman attracted customers like a magnet. Local men came to see the charming Svetlana. As if by accident, they brought her sweet dried fruits, nuts, Turkish delight, and berries. And when they left, they whispered involuntarily, turning back, "Beautiful like the sun." Lydia listened to this and grew more and more irritated. Just a moment, I highly recommend subscribing to my channel because there are touching stories like this one coming out every day. People didn't return to her, and she earned less and less. Men didn't pay attention to her. Good feelings towards Svetlana, riding this wave, began to fade. She stopped bringing homemade cookies, getting more and more angry with her. When Lydia was caught cheating customers and fined, she quieted down and stopped deceiving. However, she became embittered. In the past, cheating customers was punished more severely. They could have sentenced you to 10 years in prison. So she got lucky, commented Svetlana. She never got involved in those conversations. She always worked honestly, sometimes at a loss. One of the incidents became a turning point in Svetlana's life. One day, an old man with a stray dog wandered around the market. It's true what they say, that dogs are a reflection of their owners. These two were no exception. Both the old man and the dog had been around for a long time. Both were thin, with gray eyebrows and a beard. The elderly man wore worn-out old boots, one of which he was trying to mend with thick thread. He was dressed in a dirty jacket, clearly taken from someone with broader shoulders. He hid his gray head from the sun under a cap of a short, worn-out visor. Svetlana also noticed the dog. The intelligent animal never strayed far from its owner. The dog would always pause nearby, standing still whenever the man stopped, and gaze up at him. Svetlana loved animals a lot. Now she regretted not having a piece of sausage to treat the dog. She watched with bitterness the shaky gait of the old man, his old clothes, and the hardship they endured. While arranging bright red and pink tomatoes into neat and orderly rows, the girl kept glancing at the old man and his dog moving in her direction. They went from one stall to another, examining vegetables and asking questions. Only the sharp responses from the sellers made the old man lower his head further. By the time he approached Svetlana, the man looked extremely weary. "Excuse me, miss." The old man addressed her without lifting his gaze from the ground. He seemed embarrassed to look the saleswoman in the face, hesitant about his situation and the question he intended to ask. "Yes, Grandpa," Svetlana smiled sincerely. "Is there something you need?" "We have good sweet tomatoes and crisp cucumbers." The old man's head lowered even more. His narrow shoulders leaned forward as if a stronger force than others was pulling him toward the ground. "My dear, forgive me, but do you happen to have any vegetable scraps? Maybe there's something, maybe cabbage that you're cleaning and throwing away the dirty leaves. I would take it if possible. Or something rotten that you want to discard. Maybe you could give it to me." With each phrase, the voice of the elderly man became quieter and more timid. He shrank, tensed, as if expecting to be driven away any moment and cursed behind his back. Usually, that's what happened. He was called different things here: a bum, a beggar, a vagabond. However, sometimes, to these words, sellers added a bit of slightly spoiled potatoes, and that was already a hearty dinner. That's why the man endured. The dog sat next to him, and sensing sorrow in the owner's voice, raised intelligent eyes. She softly and lengthily whined, nudging the old man's hand. He stroked her head with calloused hands. Svetlana fell silent. The girl's heart squeezed with pain. Without saying a word, she started taking bags and collecting vegetables in them. Of course, she chose the best ones. When Svetlana turned to pick carrots, she discreetly wiped away a tear rolling down her cheek. Weighing the vegetables on the scales, the girl noted the amount of the old man's debt on a piece of paper and tucked it into her pocket, intending to pay for his purchase. "Here, Grandpa, take this." She handed the bewildered man a bag. "It's a bit heavy. Can you manage it?" The old man nodded hurriedly. He lifted his gaze to the saleswoman for the first time, seeing her open face with a gentle smile and kind eyes. The man turned away. He touched his eyes with his fingers, hiding tears. "Thank you. Thank you. May God bless you with health and all the goodness." He bowed to Svetlana, almost to the ground. Meanwhile, the girl, watching the man and the dog with her eyes, only regretted one thing, that their tent didn't sell sweet fruits, nutritious nuts, or meat for the dog. She even thought about catching up with the old man, treating him to something more, but she was distracted by new customers. On Saturdays, the market was crowded, and with each passing minute, more people flocked in. The girl was completely overwhelmed. She could barely serve customers who wanted to buy tomatoes or eggplants from her. Lydia, standing nearby and sipping coffee, watched her gloomily and dissatisfied. By the end of the day, the tired Svetlana once again remembered the poor old man with sadness. However, it turned out that the girl wasn't the only one who remembered him. At the closing of the stall, Eric, the owner of the spot, came. He was a greedy and unpleasant man. However, Svetlana rarely saw him, so she wasn't overly concerned about it. "Well, how are we doing today?" the man asked, glancing at Svetlana's earnings. He was satisfied with the saleswoman, but he never praised her. After all, if you praise her, you'll have to give her more money, and he wasn't used to parting with it. "Everything's fine," she nodded, wiping her hands on a napkin. There were a lot of people today. Eric nodded approvingly, then looked at the adjacent counter where Lydia was standing. It was fully stocked, as if the woman hadn't sold anything. At this point, Svetlana had to replenish the showcase several times, but it still wasn't enough. "Ah, Lydia, you should find yourself another spot," the man couldn't help commenting. "There's nothing to catch here. Everyone goes to Svetlana." Lydia squinted her eyes and put her hands on her hips. "Well, everyone runs to her, even local beggars." "What are you talking about?" Eric frowned, his dark eyebrows furrowed. The saleswoman raised her long nose and explained arrogantly, "You're so business-minded. You don't even know that your sellers are giving away vegetables left and right, like some charitable organization. This morning, a poor old man came, and she put the best of your vegetables for free. And that's just what I noticed. But how much more do I not see? How much is she giving away for free?" Eric, unaccustomed to charitable acts to his detriment, frowned and turned to Svetlana. "Not for free." Svetlana gasped, paling. "I'll pay for everything. I wrote down the amount for the vegetables. I just forgot to enter it. Many people came. I got distracted." She started searching her pockets, hoping to find a note. It must have fallen out, she thought. Svetlana began searching on the floor, but there was no sign of the note even there. "Svetlana is kind-hearted, Eric. I don't dispute that. But I'm sure this isn't the first time she's giving away vegetables. She even takes them home," Lydia said. "I pay for everything," offended Svetlana exclaimed. "And how will you prove it?" The woman shrugged. "Today, for example, you didn't pay. Maybe we need to catch you more often, huh? All pitiful and kind, it's so easy to deceive people." After hearing this, Eric boiled over. No need to give products to these beggars, he shouted at Svetlana in front of everyone. "That's why they'll keep wandering around you, like flies to manure. Just give them a hand, and they'll bite off the elbow. Are you really that knave? You don't understand that." "I'm fining you, got it. But for what?" "I would have paid for the vegetables," Svetlana retorted, almost crying. Her salary was already small, and with a fine, it would become even more meager. However, Eric just shook his head. For deception, he barked. "So that you don't give away other people's vegetables for free. And next time, I might even take away your salary." When Eric left, pleased with himself, Svetlana looked at Lydia. "Why are you doing this to me, Lydia? I've never said a harsh word to you." She shrugged, the initial joy of revenge settled, and now she regretted opening her mouth, but there was no turning back. "This is a lesson for you, Svetlana," the saleswoman declared. "Not all good deeds come back with kindness. Sometimes you have to pay for them. You're too naive. It's time to take off your rose-colored glasses. Later, you'll thank me." Svetlana just shook her head. "You know, when I treat people kindly, my soul rejoices. It becomes warmer and lighter inside. If I have to endure mean words or pay a fine for it, so be it. But how will you live with stones on your heart? I don't know." Lydia snorted, but Svetlana's words left a mark on her soul. Indeed, she felt bad. Another week passed. On that Saturday evening, Svetlana stayed in the tent longer than usual. Eric came again to pay her salary and then shared some moralizing advice. The man disliked giving money, even for work, so today he was particularly cantankerous. He made Svetlana check everything before Sunday sales, almost polishing each tomato with a rag. In general, when Svetlana left the market, it was getting dark. Sparse lanterns illuminated the dusk, but some of them were not working. Street hooligans had smashed them. To reach her yard, the girl carefully walked through the dark part of the road. The road was frightening with trash bins and garages. Svetlana almost reached the dim lantern when a man in a hood jumped out of the darkness towards her. The girl gasped in surprise, but the main fear was ahead. The man ran towards Svetlana and then, with a sharp movement, tried to snatch her bag. In fear, Svetlana clung to her burden and shouted loudly, "Help! Robbery! Please! Help! Shut up!" The robber yelled. "Give me the bag or I'll—" Whatever the man had planned to do with her, Svetlana didn't find out, and she didn't want to, as it was unlikely to be an extreme way of inviting her on a date. However, the clear command sounded nearby. "Bim! Get him, get him!" Immediately after, a menacing bark followed. A dog emerged from behind the garages, lunging at the thief and biting his leg. He screamed, loosening his grip, and Svetlana, who was pulling the bag towards herself, fell backward, hitting her head. She shouldn't have lost consciousness from such a weak blow, but the fear and fatigue she experienced overwhelmed her. The world around her spun, and then she slowly lost consciousness. Svetlana woke up and smelled chamomile tea. Her eyelids flickered as she tried to sit up and look around in an unfamiliar place. "Are you awake, dear?" She heard a concerned voice. "You scared me. I thought about running and asking someone to call an ambulance, but I don't have a phone." Svetlana saw an old man in front of her. Sitting next to him was a stray dog wagging its tail like a pendulum. "It's you," the girl said, recognizing her saviors. "I remember you. I remember you too, dear, and your kindness. I couldn't find a place for myself, waiting for you to wake up. I checked your head. You didn't hit. No bumps or scratches, just scared, it seems," the old man said quietly, pouring tea into a mug. "Here, take it. Drink a cup of tea. It calms down. I gather and dry chamomile myself. But it would be better if you still went to the hospital. Who knows? Concussions are no joke." Accepting the glass, Svetlana looked around attentively. The room was very small and cluttered. "It's a garage," the old man explained. "I haven't been allowed into my apartment for several years. Well, here we are, me and my dog, cramped but not offended." "Why don't they let you go home?" Svetlana asked. The old man waved his hand and sighed heavily. "My son, he only needs my pension and money from the apartment. That's how it goes. You raise a child, give him everything, and then they throw you away." The man, whose name was Viktor Olegovich, told Svetlana his sad story. He was a pensioner who used to live soulfully with his wife, raising their son with love. They lived modestly, but tried to spoil the child. However, the son grew ungrateful, moved to the capital, and forgot about his parents. He found a wife, didn't even invite the old folks to the wedding. His wife turned out to be a nasty and money-grubbing person, dreaming of taking away the relative's apartment. Time passed. 6 years ago, his beloved wife, named Christina, died from an illness. Viktor Olegovich did not leave her side until her last breath. After burying his wife, the pensioner was completely weakened. His son, who didn't even come to his mother's funeral, demanded that his father move out of the apartment. It turned out that before his mother's death, she communicated with him. At his insistence, the kind-hearted woman wrote a gift deed to her son. Now he insisted that the relative should move out, wanting to sell the property. "We need money. My wife is pregnant, you understand. Strollers, diapers, she wants to give birth in a good clinic. All of this is not free," the young man said. "Where will I go, son?" The old man spread his hands, not realizing that his child could treat him like this. "Anywhere. Even on the street," shrugged the relative. Later, the son simply moved the man's belongings from the apartment to the garage and informed him, "Other people live there now. Got it. Don't go into the apartment. If you don't want to sell, you probably won't get your pension either. I know how to take it." The son shamelessly declared, so the man stayed in the garage. Later, a dog joined him. Bim became his only and faithful friend. The man didn't go to the police or court for justice. He felt ashamed. "How can I tell the police that my own son drove me out of the house?" The old man shook his head, scratching the mongrel behind the ears. "And how much longer do I have to suffer? I'll go to the other side soon, meet Christina." Svetlana's fingers trembled so much that she had to hold the cup tighter. The tea had already started to cool. The girl looked at the chamomile flower floating on the surface of the drink, not wanting it to sink. "You shouldn't think like that," she said quietly, "and you shouldn't spend your life in a garage either." "But how else?" The old man shrugged. "Don't think that everything is so bad. There are bright days. You, a kind soul, have made my heart lighter. You're so kind, daughter." The old man warmly smiled at Svetlana, and her heart tightened, whether from the man's smile or from being called daughter. After all, no one had ever treated her, an orphan, like this. "You know what?" the girl decisively announced. "I live alone. As an orphan, the state allocated me an apartment. It's nearby. The apartment is not big, but it's mine. Come to me, Viktor Olegovich." The man tried to refuse, but the girl was adamant in her desire to help. She understood that she wouldn't be able to close her eyes, knowing that the old man would spend the night in the garage again. So Viktor Olegovich moved into Svetlana's house. The apartment was small, but there was enough space even for the dog. They lived together, cared for each other like a real family. Grandfather was surprised at how easily she could live with a stranger, as if he were really her father. They had breakfast and dinner together. The man tried to help Svetlana around the house. He delighted her with delicious soups and even knew how to bake pies. Later, Svetlana, determined to achieve justice, arranged for the pension to be deposited into the new owner's card. Now the son couldn't take it from her. "Thank you, daughter," the old man often thanked the girl. "You've done so much for me." "You've done more. You became a father to me," Svetlana responded sincerely. Of course, not everyone was happy with this outcome. One day, they encountered the son, who attacked the girl with accusations. "You took in a stranger as your father just to snatch the pension," Dennis exclaimed. "Maybe you hope to grab the apartment too." "No way." For the first time in many years, Viktor stood up to his son. He stood in front of Svetlana, shielding her from her son. "Svetlana hasn't taken a penny from me," he said firmly. "But you? I'm your son," Dennis shouted. The man sadly shook his head. "No, Dennis. I haven't had a son for a long time," he declared. "He went to Moscow and never came back. Even when his mother was sick, he didn't show up to say goodbye. He only came for the apartment, and by then, he was already a stranger. You know, keep the apartment for yourself. I'll move out. Just leave me in peace. Don't torment and tear at my old heart. I don't want to know you anymore." That's how the man bid farewell to the son. It hurt him as it was his child. With time, the pain subsided, giving way to happiness. After all, he had kind Svetlana and the loyal dog Bim by his side, his new family. Later, Svetlana brought her fiancé into the house. She introduced him to the old man and proudly said, "Meet Alexander. This is my dad." She turned to her named father. "Dad, this is Alexander. I told you about him." Svetlana used to suspect, but now she was sure. Those who sow kindness reap its fruits. After all, good deeds gave her the most valuable thing, something money can't buy: family. A cautionary tale: good things always come back. Subscribe to the channel not to miss new videos and click on the next videos.